Iranian president was killed in a helicopter crash. Now, this is wild for me. This is absolutely wild. I was looking at this and I was paying attention to it, and I was trying to actually understand whether it was something that was targeted or not. But make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Before we get to the money, let's talk about the Iranian president being killed in a car crash. Check it out.
These are the images rocking the Middle East this morning. The charred remains of a helicopter, its tail partially intact. News that rescuers who took hours to reach the remote site found only wreckage and the bodies of the dead. Iran's hardline president and its foreign minister brought down by bad weather, an official said. The thick fog and mountainous terrain evident from the pictures of the urgent rescue effort. In the US, the Senate Majority Leader racing to signal an assessment that this was not part of a plot against Iran's leaders.
I've just spoken to the intelligence authorities. At this point, there is no evidence of foul play. It looks like an accident.
It's unfortunate news, this Iranian says in Tehran. It's a loss. We were at a loss anyway. This morning, countries close to Iran sending sympathy, including China, Russia, and others in the Middle East. Europe's message of condolence shorter. Amid prayers in Iran, Western capitals are watching warily. Ebrahim Raisi ran a government that launched missiles and drones at Israel just last month, and in 2022 brutally crushed protests over the death of a young woman, Mahsa Amini. This morning, leaders of Hamas adding their public prayers. Raisi was talked about as a successor to Iran's 85-year-old supreme leader. Overnight, Ayatollah Khamenei declaring there will be no disruption in the country's affairs.
Here's my question. I am a very skeptical person, especially when it comes to war, international affairs, and stuff like that. And so I think that there's always something in there. So I know that the news reports, and of course the news reports are supposed to say that because ain't nobody going to take credit for that. Nobody would ever take credit for killing an Iranian president, and I'm not saying that anybody did. It could have very much been an accident. But as a person that is always suspicious, always trying to figure out what the silver lining is, what the objection is, what's going on over in Iran, Israel, Hamas, United States of America participating, Russia, China. For me, personally, the same way that I look at relationships, the same way when I look at accusations from a woman, I don't by default just on the surface say, you know what? It was just bad weather. I believe what the reports say. I don't. And I'm not saying that it's not true, but I'm telling you that my skeptical eye, in the middle of a war, in the middle of all of these attacks that's being launched, you're telling me, and again, I could be absolutely off, and it could 100% be, oh man, you know, he just went over very treacherous mountains in a helicopter and he wanted to take the risk, right? Are you telling me that I'm supposed to just by default not be skeptical and question everything considering what's going on in the world right now? That I'm just so supposed to by default believe the news, and that's just it. That one of the most in the news presidents, governments just jumped on a helicopter over one of the most treacherous mountains in the worst weather, and he was just killed by a helicopter crash, and that's it? And then again, it's a strong possibility that it very much is exactly that. It could absolutely 100% be that. But with everything that's going on all around and all of the convenience that's surrounding this and everybody knowing where everybody location and stuff, you're telling me that this was just divine, happenstance, all of that I shouldn't question it? Let's watch the rest of the report.
Tonight, Ayatollah Khamenei declaring there will be no disruption in the country's affairs. An interim president chosen, but who replaces Raisi long term? The future of Iran, now another uncertainty amid the instability of the Middle East. And Savannah, a new election in Iran must be held within 50 days. How Iran and Iranians react to this news, still an open question this morning, but one former Iranian foreign minister describing US sanctions against Iranian aviation as one of the main culprits. Savannah?
All right, Keir, thank you. I want to turn now to NBC's chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. Richard, I mean, let's start right there where Keir left us. How is this being received within Iran?
Iranians are celebrating in private. Many Iranians hated Raisi. They hate the regime.
See what I'm saying? Like, how do we know that Iranians, because when you speak to something, you got to speak to the majority, not the minority, right? You can say, hey, a portion of the population is celebrating. Some people disagree with him. Some people agree with him. He's speaking for Iran and Iranians and saying that they are celebrating that this happened to their president. Come on, fam. Like, they already putting their own spin on it. They're already putting their own spin on it. How do we know that Iranians just by default is like, oh man, we so happy that this is going on? How do we know this? He's saying, hey man, Iranians, they all celebrating. They happy that this is happening. Man, they basically planting these thoughts into our minds. And I'm not saying again that it's not true, you know, as far as the helicopter crashing and stuff like that. But this is all, now it's turning into propaganda because they're spinning it in a way that they're trying to make this seem like, hey, this is just an act of God. This is what was supposed to happen. And everybody is celebrating as a result of it. Man, I don't know that. I don't know that.
But it is a regime that is effective at maintaining control and maintaining dominance. As Keir just mentioned, there had been street demonstrations with many women on the streets taking off their veil, insulting the regime, insulting the clerical rule. But the regime had crushed those demonstrations, crushed those protests, and I think it would be very hard for demonstrators to go out now and take to the streets, especially when the regime's guards are up and they are most aware and cautious about any kind of civil disturbance.
Well, as you well know, Raisi was president, but the real power in Iran lies with the Ayatollah. And Raisi was actually seen as a likely successor to the Ayatollah, who is getting on in years. So that sets up a potential succession crisis within Iran. How do you see that playing out?
100%. I think they will be able to find a new president fairly quickly. But in Iran, the president just carries out the orders of the supreme leader. And what's significant about Raisi is that he was 63 years old. The supreme leader who runs the country, the Ayatollah, is 85 and not well. Raisi was widely seen as the person who was going to take over for him in a year or two. So he could potentially have been in power for the next 2 decades or so. Now, a real leadership crisis. Who will it be? It's possible that someone could emerge from the Revolutionary Guard, someone from the intelligence services, but not necessarily someone who's going to emerge from this electoral process that's going to take place over the next 50 days. And policy, by the way, is not likely to change. It is very unlikely that we're going to see some sort of moderate, some sort of anti-revolutionary person come up. I think you're going to get another hardliner, maybe from the Rev Guard or the intelligence services, step in, and we're going to see an internal fight. But now you have a succession crisis because he was the one who was going to lead this country for the next 20 years from the top.
All right. Richard Engel, thank you very much.
So, again, I just wanted to make sure that I brought this to you guys' attention that overnight the Iranian president was killed in a helicopter crash. Obviously, they're still investigating. Me personally, I don't take anything at face value. I question everything. And it doesn't mean that it's right or that it's wrong or that it's accurate or it's inaccurate. But what I'm personally saying is it's nothing wrong with trying to understand the details other than just running with the narrative that's being perpetuated to you by, by whatever propaganda, whatever news agency, whatever government agency or whatever. Just keep your eyes open, keep your head on a swivel. Don't by default believe everything that everybody says. I think it's better that way. It doesn't mean that it's going to change anything, but I think that it's important for you to stay informed on what's going on. And then we're free thinkers over here. That's the thing that we encourage over here. We're not saying what did happen, what didn't happen. We wait for the evidence to come out, but we always think freely and we try to use our context clues in order to come to a better conclusion or a hypothesis, which is an educated guess of what really happened versus what they're reporting to us. You know what I'm saying? So we free thinkers, we embrace everybody on all sides as long as people are not disrespectful. We want people to think outside of the box and add their value into this, and that's why Chat Lives matters. That's why I appreciate you guys, and that's why I wanted to make sure that you guys stay informed on what's happening out in these streets, all right? And then ultimately, it all ties back into what we got going on here in America and then what's going on with the money.